Hello viewers, welcome back. I was hoping this next movie would pick up speed after Loss. Unfortunately, except for the very end, that wasn't really the case. I feel like this review is just going to be one complaint after another, but the beginning was promising. Once again, we pick up right where we left off, with Meicoomon losing herself to the infection again when Genai threatens Meiko. Once he achieves this, Genai disappears again, and Meicoomon opens up distortion portals everywhere, leading the charge of Digimon into the human world, and leaving the kids behind. Nishijima is still having no luck getting in touch with anyone or getting answers from his superiors, so he goes to see Meiko's father, a scientist who's been working with Himekawa, studying Meicoomon for years. And on that note, this is something that has not been revealed, but I suspect they may have created Meicoomon. Genai told her that she never should have been born into their world, and we saw in flashbacks that Meiko met her in the real world. Throughout the years, they observed that Meicoomon would become unstable anytime she was separated from her partner. This is when Hackmon comes back to tell them that Meikoomon's data includes a piece of Apocalypmon, who some believe was literally made from chaos, and may be the source of that instability. Basically, constantly being with Meiko is the only thing that was keeping her stable, and Hackmon thinks that she's now past a point of no return, where she won't be able to recognize a partner anymore. He tells them that homeostasis has already decided to just destroy Meicoomon before she mutates again and becomes too powerful for them to handle. But after this promising start, the action drops off pretty quickly. The kids are still stuck in the rebooted digital world and are facing a new problem, now that Genai has gotten what he wants, Meicoomon causing destruction in the real world. The digital world itself seems to be fighting them. Portals popping up out of nowhere, the landscape changing unexpectedly and attacking them, until it finally just spits them back out in their world. Coexistence is supposed to be Kari's focus movie, and this is what her personal story revolves around, but I'm going to come back to that because it got swallowed up by something else. After Hackmon's visit, most of this movie felt like just one long scene after another of the kids pulling Meiko out of this self-pitying depression. Basically, her reasoning is that Meicoomon acting this way must mean she wasn't a good partner, or a good person in general. And then the other kids rush to reassure her that of course this isn't true, and that they're still connected, and there's still hope, and they're all there for her. But it just dragged on throughout the whole movie. Like the first time, the kids are still in the digital world, sitting around a campfire, and even though this first scene felt like it went on a little too long after the point had been made, it provided an atmosphere that I really liked, something that had been missing a lot of the time from the first 4 movies. The other 8 reassure Meiko that they've all had their own doubts and hard times with their partners, and that they overcame them together, and they really felt like a team again. But then we get a second scene of Meiko doubting herself, and a third, and they're all long scenes that just rehash the same issues over and over again. In fact, the pacing of the whole movie is just a little off. In between Meiko's depression and the information dump surrounding Meikoomon's destruction, we get these scenes of the kids brainstorming, though not really coming to any conclusions, and then a few scenes that seem to be setting up a romance between Meiko and Tai, and one where the kids all tell ghost stories while they're hiding out in the school. They're just odd storytelling choices, and odd is the polite way of putting it. There's only one movie to go after this, and a lot more that I feel needs to be covered before this story can feel complete. It does not feel like the time to be delaying the plot in favor of these slower, repetitive, and sometimes completely pointless scenes. Coexistence was just very all or nothing. The Digidestined spend 2/3 of this movie just sitting around until they finally confront Meicoomon again at the end, and the last scene is just chaos. The kids are torn between trying to save Meicoomon and destroying Meicoomon before she can do any more damage. But then homeostasis sends a Digimon to destroy her for them, and they start to wonder if King Drazel, who we still know practically nothing about, may not be the bad guy after all. But Meicoomon still has the presence of mind to save Mako from one of Chessmon's attacks, so the kids decide to fight homeostasis in favor of saving Meicoomon. And it's like they tried to jam a dozen different major points into the last, 10 minutes to make up for the previous hour and a half where nothing really happened. In the end, Mako loses hope again mid-battle, Tai is lost in the destruction. I mean, the audience knows better, but presumed dead by the characters, causing Kari to go off the deep end, which kind of draws all the darkness to her, leaving Gatomon infected too, until the two infected Digimon merge into one being. Becoming the embodiment of pure chaos is what I think they were going for. Matt rallies his friends for the next battle, and it's on that dark note that this movie ends. But finally, let's talk about Kari. Coexistence is supposed to be her movie, but it didn't really feel that way. She has a few moments throughout. She's the most affected by the Digiworld itself rejecting them. Later, when they're spending the night in the school, she has everyone pondering how problems never feel real until they affect you personally, still stuck in that gloom. And then there's the end, of course, which basically ran on the same ideas as the Dark Ocean plotline in 02. That being the most innocent and pure makes her the most vulnerable to darkness, as well as having the greatest power over it. But it didn't really feel like she had her own story or grew as a character the way the others did in their focus movies. Coexistence confirmed my fears for both Kari and Mako's character progression, honestly. All of Mako's strength from the last movie is gone, leaving her as this damsel in distress plot device. And not that I want to see that in any character, but we already have someone filling that role. Maybe that sounds a little harsh. I've never really disliked Kari. She was a much weaker character than the other 7, but also had half the screen time and was endearing in her own way. I think the real problem now is that all her teammates are continuing to grow and Kari is remaining stagnant. It's just the other characters. Their actions affect the story. With Kari, it's the other way around. Things happen to her, but when she moves the story along, it's rarely because of an action or decision on her part. In fact, it's usually because some other being has possessed her. Her light, or purity, or innocence, or whatever you want to call it, is a good tool for the writers. They can explain away just about anything with it, without actually having to explain anything. But that's not good for Kari as a character. And now that the Tri-movies have taken the time to explore everyone else further, it just isn't holding up anymore. I've tried to be optimistic. There was some promise in the way she'd been written between Reunion and Loss. She just wasn't at the forefront of any of those movies. There were about 60 seconds in Coexistence that I was really excited for. Homeostasis takes over again, and Kari is still strong enough to fight it for control of her body. But then everything goes to hell, and while I'm sure she'll have to be rescued from the darkness in the next movie, I get the feeling her moment to shine is over, and that's disappointing. All in all, this movie was kind of all over the place. Either nothing was happening or everything was happening all at once and it was a jumbled mess. It was just a bad time for things to go downhill, with only one movie left to wrap everything up. I want to be optimistic, but Tri has not had the best track record with pacing. All the movies have been a little slow, the other 4 just had something else to them to even things out. In Coexistence, the story is barely moved forward, and the characters it was meant to focus on barely get any development. I just can't help worrying there's too much that still needs to be covered. The conflict, and I would assume reunion, between Mako and Meicoomon. Not to mention, I'd be surprised if there wasn't still more to Meikoomon's origins to be revealed. I'm still waiting on a clearer explanation of homeostasis and King Drazel and what exactly they are. Nothing more has been said about the Digidestin who disappeared. Nothing more has been explained about the Harmonious Ones and Nishijima and Himekawa's past. And Himekawa's got some present-day issues to work out. And now, on top of all that, they have to find Tai and sort out what just happened with Kari. I think I've made it clear enough by now that my love for Digimon runs pretty deep. Whatever happens, I'm not going to regret the time I spent watching Try, but I would like to see it done well. One more to go. Thank you for watching.